Hi, everyone. Thanks for joining this call. I am Sonia Howlett. I work for the Vermont Agency of Agriculture, Food and Markets, and I run the Capital Equipment Assistance Program, which has existed for a couple years now, I think 6 or 7 at least. And we're going to talk a little today about what the program is and the upcoming deadline of November 1st and what might need to happen for you to get an application in. So to start, what is this program? Well, it is a grant program. It provides up to 90% cost share on conservation equipment. It is reimbursement based, so you would apply for the grant, receive potentially the grant, you would go out and buy the equipment, and then we would pay up to 90% or the grant amount, whichever you get to first, after you've made that investment in the equipment. And the payment cap varies by the type of equipment that you're interested in purchasing. In our statute that set this program up, we really, the focus is on water quality improvements and reducing runoff of waste to state waters. Some other benefits that we are proud to support include reduction of odors, phosphorus separation, decreasing greenhouse gas emissions, and reduced costs when applying manure. But the focus really has been for several years on the water quality parts of this program. And part of that's because we're the water quality division. And the other part of that is that's where our money's coming from, right? This program is funded this year by the Clean Water Fund, which is a fund that's specifically designed for clean water projects. I have made a fun little AI image this morning to describe like money talks, right? Like that's where we get money for this program for. And so that's what the focus is for the farmers who apply. Other Agency of Ag programs have, like, for example, some of the Agricultural Development Division has some very popular grant programs that are thinking a little bit more about like the bottom line of the farmers who apply, that, innovative business practices, efficiency of operations, and those are all obviously really important benefits that I'm sure you all are thinking about for yourselves. But as far as our decision making around this program, at the end of the day, a lot of it comes down to the water quality benefit of the equipment that folks are applying for. To that end, the types of equipment that we accept applications for include precision agriculture, conservation tillage, cover cropping, waste management, and feed management. And if you look online, you will see that we have a fact sheet, and that fact sheet describes some of the types of equipment that we've seen in these categories in the past and the cost share, which varies by equipment type. Most are kind of tagged to the approximate price that we see typically for equipment of that type. So precision agriculture typically is more often lower cost, and the water quality benefits are often a little bit more tenuous, and so the cap in that category is the lowest at $25,000 per applicant maximum. Conservation tillage and cover crop and feed management, or conservation tillage and cover crop, I should say, all come in around $40,000 as the maximum amount that we're willing to put into those equipments. Feed management a little higher. That we'll talk a little more about that category. That category is often one of the more complicated ones of trying to understand the water quality benefit of those types of projects. And then finally, waste management, such as drag line, manure injection toolbars, compost and bedded pack management. Again, we see a wide range of costs under this category, but some of those bigger projects come in at a higher cost. So the cap there is $60,000. For farms, the cap's higher if a custom applicator or nonprofit is applying manure on multiple farms and has a bigger need and a bigger footprint for that equipment. We do explicitly name some equipment as ineligible. These are types of equipment that have just historically never ranked out well in our program, or the water quality benefit is less clear. So frac tanks, manure tanks, and manure pumps have never been funded. Tractors, everyone can use a tractor and it can have a great big impact on your farm, we know, but the water quality benefit isn't there, and frankly, we can't buy everyone one. And then similarly, equipment that performs full width tillage, deep tillage, or soil inversion do carry some water quality risks. So we haven't been comfortable funding those in the past. And then solid manure spreaders or broadcast manure spreaders, in my mind, are a little like tractors. Everyone can use one. What would make one applicant need one more than the other is kind of hard to say. And we have not ever funded those. The caveat on that one category is that we have in recent years started to fund compost management equipment at a higher rate than we had previously. So if you are making finished compost out of your manure and need a spreader or other equipment to help you manage and spread your finished compost, that is eligible for CEAP funds. So I would say I get a lot of questions around this type of equipment, that type of equipment. Is it eligible? Is it not eligible? Generally speaking, as long as it's not on this list of ineligible equipment, yes, it is eligible. I think the question then is like, what's the water quality benefit to your farm? If it's, moderate, if it's high, that's probably a really good fit for CEAP, even if you don't see it explicitly listed as eligible. If you know what benefit it's going to have for you and you're able to write that in your application, it's likely to do well. If it's a little bit more of a stretch, so I'd encourage you to, if you have the time, still put an application in, and we can think about it with our review team. And just, I would say, when you do that, try to really focus in on what that benefit is going to be for your farm, specifically in reducing runoff or specifically in reducing leachate, etc. So on that note, our application deadline is 2 weeks from now, November 1st. You could expect that to hear back about your application no later than February of next year, hopefully a little sooner than that. And we are looking for equipment that will be purchased between when you're notified and June of next year. So don't go buy it now. We can't fund anything you already own, but you would apply now, indicate what you're interested in purchasing, and then if you're selected for funding, you would move ahead into purchasing, hopefully with the goal of using it in 2025. So now it's mid-October. We have a couple weeks till November 1st. How do you apply? So this is just a screenshot of our water quality division or main site within the Agency of Agriculture, Food and Markets website. You can see a lot of information here. If you go up to the top to funding opportunities or under assistance programs from our site, you will be taken to the Capital Equipment Assistance Program, and I'll drop a link in the chat as well. A lot of times I also just recommend that people Google it, because if you Google CEAP Vermont Agriculture, you can get there pretty directly as well. And all of the information I'm going over today will be hopefully on this website, so you can reference it in the future. Particularly, I'd say the fact sheet is pretty good. It has that table I just showed about the different caps and categories and eligible equipment, as well as some more information about the program. And there is a section further down as you scroll on this website around how to apply as well. And that includes links to everything I'm about to show you, the application, the questionnaire, etc. I am just going to take a moment to share. You might be curious about kind of what your chances are of, if you do apply, of receiving funds in the program. Again, there, if you read through the website, you'll see that some of the criteria we use for ranking, again, water quality benefit is really one of the higher ones. But historically, we've funded about 1/3 to 1/2 of applicants. That over the years, this program has grown, so we have more money now than we did 2 years ago, and much more than we did, 4 years ago. And as the program has grown, we have started to be able to accept a few more applicants. I think last year we accepted, 50 to 60% over the last 2 years. And the current budget is level with last year. $1.5 million is available for fiscal year 2025. And last year we received just over $3 million in request. So that as you will, but typically I'd say good projects with a water quality benefit that are well scaled to your farm and have, a clear impact tend to scale well, but it is still a competitive program. And, we only have so much money. So if you are planning to apply, the first step is to prepare some supporting documents. The first thing I recommend people look into acquiring is some quotes, or at least one quote. I recommend that you consider looking at a couple of different places, looking new, looking used, looking online, and doing your due diligence around understanding what type of equipment is going to work best for you, and where you can get that affordably or where you can get that easily. How long is it going to take for it to arrive? All those kinds of questions. That's always good to ask when buying something for your farm. And then once you have a pretty good idea of what you want to purchase, prepare a quote, download it, take a screenshot, whatever you have to do to be able to submit that with your application. We do know that, you all are doing that research now, submitting your application. And like I said before, you're not going to be actually purchasing this equipment till maybe March or April, right? So if you're looking at used equipment or even new equipment, prices might change. The equipment that's available might change between now and then. So think of this quote as a way of helping us and you understand what type of equipment you're looking for and the general price range that's likely to cost, because we're budgeting based on that, in terms of like what 90% would be. And you, I'm sure, are also wanting to budget as well. So that's just a few notes on the quote. If you aren't exactly sure what you're going to get, feel free to submit more than one. But again, you will be asking for a certain amount of money depending on the cost of the quote. Typically speaking, equipment that is, lower cost does rank out, that we do consider kind of the efficiency of our funds in our ranking process. So it's all just a calculation of like what do you need, what seems like the most efficient way for you to invest in that equipment and for the state to invest in that equipment. Secondly, we do ask you when you apply to attach a questionnaire that answers some questions about what the benefits of this equipment will be for your farm, and how you intend to use it, what changes might occur once you have the equipment compared to what you're doing now. Again, this is something you'll be submitting with your application, and it might take you some time, so I encourage you to do that in advance so you have it ready once you submit your application. And you can download this online, but it's pretty generic, basic, who are you, what do you want to do? We don't need you to be like a poet laureate, you don't need to be complicated, but just tell us what what you're trying to do and what effect you think it's going to have is really the goal for this questionnaire. In this case where you are applying for feed management equipment, like I said, this category is a little bit more complex. If it includes 3 types of most likely eligible equipment. If you're applying for equipment that lifts up your hay equipment to leave higher haying residual, that's pretty straightforward, right? We know there's water quality benefits to that. You don't need to think about anything more complicated. You can just put that application in. But if you are applying for like a baler wrapper, for example, the only way that we're able to fund that equipment with the water quality benefit, or that we've chosen to through this program, is if that investment is tied to a transition away from a method of storing feed that is currently insufficient or causing leachate or otherwise posing a water quality risk. And so if you are in that situation where that's the type of equipment you're looking at, we will send out an inspector or an engineer to assess your site and to help understand what the transition would look like. And most likely, if you're currently managing silage in a feed bunk, we will ask you to, agree if you get the equipment to close that feed bunk down and to start managing feed in that new wrapped or baled manner instead. And so we do ask you to share more information about that in your questionnaire. And then that 3rd category of feed management equipment is, really the focus of feed improvement. And this has a wide door of what that could look like, right? Reduced importation of feed. Is that making better forage so you don't have to buy so much in? Is it making your own grain so you don't have to, again, buy so much in? Situation where that's what your farm is looking into, we ask that you reach out to UVM Extension or to someone else who you are working closely with in a planning manner, and to document kind of what your investments in feed are now, how many pounds you're bringing in of each type of feed, and then what you would anticipate under the newer management style that you would use with the equipment requested. The numbers that would go into this calculation are typically, I understand, like in the amount of feed that you're creating and the quality, the amount of feed you're purchasing and the quality, and then also any exports from the farm, whether that's sales of animals, sales of milk, sales of meat, etc. Those are all ways that phosphorus is leaving your landscape. And so if, for example, you increase your milk or your meat creation and you're able to sell more of that off farm while still buying the same or less grain, that's a net export of phosphorus on your farm. So again, if you have more questions about that, I encourage you to reach out to Heather Darby and to start thinking through that calculation prior to applying to CEAP. And then we do make space for if you are working with a TA provider or someone else who is able to speak more to the benefit of this equipment on your operation. We accept letters of support to help you make that story, but that is by no means required. And yeah, I think I've made this point of, this is what this program is for and kind of how we're reviewing these applications. And then once you have all of that, right, the next step is to just kind of type in the basic information about your farm and what the equipment purpose is into our online application. Again, once you have the quote, once you have the questionnaire, this shouldn't take very long. It's really mostly demographic and helping us understand, you're just typing in like, yes, I'm looking for a manure injection toolbar. Yes, I think it's going to cost $58,000 and I am planning to do injection with it, right? So that's just for our compilation of the applications we receive. One, we do have a PDF available as well. It asks all the same questions. It's just a PDF, so you can choose whichever format works best for your farm. And we'll skip forward one moment. One thing that you should be considering when you apply is, in addition to what the water quality benefit is, et cetera, is that we will ask you when you apply to estimate the use of the equipment. So if it is an equipment that's used for implementing conservation practices across a certain number of acres, for example, in this example, right, so this farm applied for a no-till grain drill, and the primary purpose was cover cropping as well as crop to hay planting and renovation. And when they apply, we ask you to share how widespread on how many acres you plan to install those practices over the course of the first 5 years of equipment ownership. So that is a number that's going to go into the grant agreement. And so I encourage you to be considerate of like what seems reasonable for me, and to apply accordingly. Don't overestimate thinking that it's going to look better on your application. We do, tend to prioritize projects that are a good impact on the landscape compared to their cost. But also when the time comes, if you were to receive an agreement, we are expecting to see that amount of implementation on your farm. So I just caution you against being a little overly optimistic here. Okay, so to back up a moment, I did want to share that as you're thinking about applying, I'd say for now your focus with the deadline coming up should be on getting your CEAP application in, but do know that there are some other programs that may be able to supplement if the cap under CEAP is too low to make investment in a particular piece of equipment a good option for you. You could consider applying now for the cost of the equipment and the water quality grants that the Vermont Housing and Conservation Board supports. You could consider applying for that come when their application opens in January, because they and their grants and CEAP are able to be combined together to cumulatively support a bigger grant. In addition, right, like let's say we just said if there's any amount of tillage, we tend to not do so, those projects tend to not do so well in CEAP. So you could consider saying, well, first I need one type of equipment that does a little more tillage, even though it's reduced tillage. I know it's not going to do as well in CEAP, but that's going to be an important part of my cover crop planting regime. Once I've used that piece of equipment, then I'm going to want to use a roller crimper, for example. You could say, okay, well, I'm going to apply to CEAP for the roller crimper and try the VHCB water quality grants for that more tillage focused cover crop planting machine, because it doesn't seem that CEAP is going to be able to fund it. And I know that VHCB water quality grants have a little bit more flexibility in what types of projects they accept. So that is a strong recommendation I would make, is to look into those. Again, they're not open yet. So apply to CEAP first, but do know that that might be a possibility. And then we do see a lot of people who kind of get equipment through CEAP, but are also working through best management practices grants in various ways for more of the like built infrastructure part of their farm transitions. Maybe that's, manure transfer, bedded packs, manure pits, etc. We're able to maybe help with equipment that would support that better use of that built infrastructure. And I don't know as much about this, but I would encourage folks to look into Efficiency Vermont. They do have some funds available to support energy efficient ag equipment, and they reached out to me earlier this year to talk about dragline and it sounds like they're doing some like lighting and refrigeration type projects. So just wanted to put their name out there. And then of course, CEAP is totally happy to, help a jigsaw puzzle fit together of funding for something on your farm. But obviously we don't want to put money in that someone else has already put in so that you get twice as much money and only pay once. So hopefully that's pretty obvious, but we aren't trying to double up. But we are very open to you pulling from multiple sources to help get yourself up to the full cost of the project, or at least closer to it. And you might be thinking right now, wow, this is a ton of information. Sorry. And also, wow, those are a ton of programs. Also, a little less sorry, because it is good to have more options, right? But I do want to make a plug for, you all probably know this, but there are a number of organizations out there who might be able to help you navigate some of the applications, put it together, help you find quotes, etc. listed here. UVM extension, conservation districts, those tend to be my go-tos. The farmer watershed groups that exist across the state also have been staffing up and might have capacity to help you with your applications as well. And then of course, all the other partners that we work with in the state, business planners. NOFA has some folks who I know are helping put applications in. American Farmland Trust, similarly, and you might be working with someone else as well who you know of. No lack of people in the state who are out there to help farmers get applications together for grant programs. I'll take a moment now. Does anyone have any questions specifically on what I've shared so far? Okay, well, I will keep forging ahead then. And again, at the end of this presentation, I will stop the recording in case that you have any specific questions to your farm. So let's assume with the help of these people, with the help of, the website or whatever, you do get your application in, it's reviewed, and it's accepted, which is very exciting. What does that look like? So most of the time we try to notify you, again, February the latest. Ideally, I try to notify folks by the end of December, early January. You would do some paperwork at that point in time, and then go from, and once all the paperwork is set, and only once all the paperwork is set would you be approved to make that purchase. Like we just talked about, the acreages that you put into your agreement that you put into your application do go into your agreement. If your type of equipment the use of it is not best measured in acres. So for example, if you were to receive funding for a baler wrapper, really the benefit to the state in terms of water quality is the closure of your potentially leaky feed bunk. In that case, what you would see in this section of your grant agreement would not be as focused on acres, and instead would say that you would be closing your feed bunk. So again, whatever the benefit that the state is receiving from investing in your farm and your project is what gets listed as your performance measures. That all would get written up into a grant that would also include the amount of your award that you are approved for, your name and everything, and the type of equipment that you've been approved for. So for example, no-till grain drill. We don't specify make, we don't specify model, we don't specify width. There is, you do have the option once you receive your award to maybe change your mind compared to what you had applied for. But we are asking that the equipment you purchase is, the same type of equipment you applied for, and it has the same benefit, of course, as you applied for. You'll get probably a DocuSign request from me, which would come via this email. You'd probably also get a separate email from my email directly. You would have a chance to review and sign online. We'll also ask you to share a certificate of insurance. If your grant is small and you are not insured, you could reach out to me, and we have in the past been able to work through that. For example, last year we had a $3,000 grant with a very small vegetable farm. They did not carry farm insurance, and we were able to make that work. So if that seems like a barrier to you, let me know. But across the board, typically we require that you're insured. I think the idea being that if you crash your brand new grain drill into something, technically the state has a stake in that grain drill, and they want to make sure that you have insurance on the equipment. Once we receive that paperwork, that grant signature, and the certificate of insurance, you will get an email from me that says you've been approved to purchase. The next steps are to purchase. And this is the email that you're waiting for in order to go out and talk to the dealer and put money down and make that investment. Once you've gotten the equipment and it's arrived at your farm and it's set up and it's ready to go, at that point in time, you send us 2 to 3 photos and the invoices or copies of the receipt for any parts of equipment that you purchased. And that's the point in time at which 90% of the costs up to the amount that you will have seen in your grant agreement. Important note here, shipping is not eligible for CEAP. So, if you're having to go to Pennsylvania, unfortunately, the costs of getting the equipment here do not count. But otherwise, installation on site, connecting it to your GPS, all that kind of little pieces that need to happen typically are reimbursable. And we try to do that reimbursement relatively quickly once we receive all of that information. It might take up to 60 days, but that's quite rare. And then I won't dwell on this, but we do write 5-year agreements. And so, you are on the hook to use the equipment for what you said you were going to do for those 5 years. And for the first 3 seasons, for the first 3 years, we ask that you report and tell us what you ended up doing with the equipment, whether that's, if it's an acreage focused agreement, you would send those maps and those dates of use. If you have a less acreage focused agreement, you might be asked to send us more of a written narrative around, yes, I did indeed convert my management to a more compost focused management, and therefore that has been successful or not, right? If you have a precision agriculture component, we do ask that A, you know how to use it, and that B, you know how to export from it, so that you can share that information with us at the end of the year. So if you do have precision ag, that we, instead of the more written report, we ask for the export from your system. And that occurs for 3 years. If you aren't meeting your acreage goals or your other performance measures, we'll be in conversation about that. The worst case scenario, if you don't do what you said you were going to do, the absolute worst case scenario is that we would ask for money back up to the amount we invested. That's quite rare, obviously. In between scenarios might involve, we ask you for additional years of reporting, or some other way of making sure that that you are complying with the program requirements and that it's fair, right? Because if you get this money, someone else didn't get that money, and so if you don't do what you said you were going to, which is why you got the money, then it becomes kind of a question of like, well, we could have given this to someone else. So we're trying to uphold that sense of fairness around, stewarding taxpayer money. And so that's why we really are trying to hold folks to what they say they were going to do here. I would say don't worry too much about it, but if you do not think that your farm will be farming in 5 years, or that you will be using this equipment in 5 years, this might not be the right program for you. This might not be the right time for you to make that investment. We are really looking to see up, 5 years at minimum of use of this equipment. So just want to say that clearly, that if there's, a significant degree of uncertainty around what your farm's going to look like in the next year or two, this wouldn't be a good place to come for funding. And so that is the rest of my general overview. I'm going to stop the recording now, and then if folks have questions about any particular equipment, I'd be happy to answer it.